Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, fellow writers. Here's a change for everyone today. I look clean. That's news.
Yay!
But anyways, that over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Lewis, aka Catherine. I doubted myself there for a second. I should never do that. I am Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien, and there's been like a couple episodes where Karissa shows up with wet hair, and I'm always jealous because I'm like, God, she looks just like clean and refreshed. And today that's me. But of course, Carissa's still showing me up because she's got like glorious, like Shakira type hair going on today.
Thanks.
So I can't wait.
I have my window, like my curtains open, so it's also just very bright in here. So I feel like that's making a difference.
You look like a lioness with the way like the sun's like reflecting off your eyes and your hair. You look very powerful. I always look a little ghostly because of my like really blue tinted light for some reason.
Yeah.
But fun. Yeah, it's good to be here. I was just gonna right off the bat say publicly I'm very sorry to Karissa, which I said before recording, but I'm gonna say it again because Karissa is being such a sweet angel. I texted her with way less than a day of notice, being like, hey, could we record like tonight instead of tomorrow night? Because my husband had texted me and said that he was going to come home. We didn't think he was going to get to come home this month, but he said he was going to come home tomorrow and said that he might take me out to dinner, and I don't get to go out a lot. So I was like, okay, so maybe if we can record tonight, we can do that instead. But it turns out that was also, I mean, yes, we're going to do that, but it was also kind of a trick to mislead me because he surprised me by coming home tonight. So I was like, can we actually push that recording that I moved already a whole day earlier? Can we actually push it like 30 minutes, even though Karissa actually has something she needs to do today? So I'm very sorry. She's being very gracious, but I threw everything off today.
It's cool. I want to be like the kind of person that can be flexible.
You're extremely flexible. I'm always 3 to 10 minutes late. I kind of already
told you I had a week. So I was trying not to like let that seep into my responses to you. So
that's
I didn't want to be rude because it's not your fault. So
well, that's okay. You can let it out. Do you want to tell me about your week? Because I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, okay, here's the thing. I handle big problems really well. Okay, I'm good at crisis management. I get this from my father. He's also very good at crisis management. If someone had like gone to the hospital or died, I would be on top of it. I would be like, great, I can push everything off. It'll be fine. But the little inconveniences piling up just get me. And 100%. I feel like God is just trying my patience this week. And I'm not doing as badly as I would think, but I'm not doing well. So, we're in that middle ground. So
I fully understand. I just sent you a meme that I think you'll relate to. That's exactly about that concept. Yeah. So, just I hope you enjoy it because it made me laugh today. Later. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
So like, first of all, I had planned, like, I don't go out a lot either, right? So I had planned that I was going to go see my grandparents over the weekend. And I was going to spend the day over there and everything. And just because of the type of person I am, okay, I just like to be given a heads up, like 5 minutes. 5 minutes a heads up. That's fine. I just need a heads up. I'm not good at jumping. Yeah. So I am planning to be able to sleep in because it's Saturday. And my dad just like opens the door at like, I don't know, it was probably like 9. And so I was still asleep and lets the dogs in and is like, we're leaving. You're taking care of the dogs. I'm like, literally 5 minutes is all the warning I need. But you just made them come in right now. And they're like puppies. So they want to jump on me and they want to lick me and they want to play. And I was just like, okay, well, now my day is just starting off really bad. It's not good.
It's really frustrating. Continue.
It is. And my dad is the kind of person that can jump, so I don't think he notices that other people are just thrown off all day because of stuff like that. So I was really irritated with him.
Yeah.
And then that same day I have this like ongoing kind of Upwork job going, and I had thought it had ended. But then they messaged me and said, actually, I do want this. And I don't even know what the deadline is. So I was like, do I need to send it today? Because I don't have time because I have stuff to do today. I'm going to see my grandparents. So I was like, okay, second thing, I'm just going to have to worry about that tomorrow because I can't do anything about that today. Yeah. And then like 10 minutes before I'm supposed to leave, my dad again calls up and asks me to do the dishes. And I'm like, okay, look, I don't mind doing the dishes. any kind of heads up would just be very useful right now, right?
Yes.
So then I had to rush to get ready, and like I know like I was going to my grandparents, so it's not like I had to do a lot. So I was literally planning to get ready 10 minutes before I had to leave.
Yeah.
And so I had to rush all that. And then I went down and did the dishes, and I was trying so hard to just be like, everything is fine. I am not, totally rioting inside. Like, it's totally cool.
Yeah.
So I think I was calm. My mom said I was doing it with a good attitude, which I was like, all right, sweet, success.
No one would ever say that about me when I'm experiencing inconvenience after inconvenience. Wow.
So then I don't know. Everything else was great. I went over to my grandparents' house. We watched some movies. It was fun. My cousin came by and surprised us. She was surprising my grandparents, but I happened to be there, so I got the
you got
benefit
to enjoy
of that.
the surprise.
Yeah, exactly. And then today, so I mean, again, this was like several days ago, but then I'm just still kind of off from it and like recovering from the inconvenience. And then today I had another like TikTok grammar fight with someone in the comments.
And we know those get you worked out.
Yet again, I know it's not a big deal, but this one was like actively mean. And the others were just like people trying to argue with me about the substance, right?
Yeah.
And this one was like calling me a classist and elitist because I care about grammar, and like being actively rude. And
what?
I was like, okay, because here's the thing. So there's this song. Have you heard the Chronically Cautious song by like Braden Bales or something like that?
Is it a comedic song?
No. Well, I mean,
then maybe
kind
not.
of. It's like a real song. But anyway, if you guys have heard of it. So there's this line that says, I'm sitting nauseous. And I'm like, look, I get it. It rhymes. It's fun. It's supposed to be nauseated, right?
Yeah.
So I just made a little joke. Like I had the song playing, and I think the exact words I said were like, it's supposed to be nauseated. How do I hear past this? Right. As like, and then I like hashtagged it grammar nerd problems.
And someone's like, you're like an elitist.
Yeah. They said, it was something along the lines of, you're being pedantic and unfair, and life is lonely in an ivory tower. And I was like, okay, I like took I literally took 10 seconds, and I was like, I already have a response. So I responded to them, wow, how unnecessarily rude, especially since I was clearly just making a lighthearted joke for grammar nerds like me. And then they just went off about how like I unlearned this toxic behavior of classist grammar stuff. And I hope you do too. And so I was like, I didn't say this, but I was like, excuse you? So
I would have said, excuse you? What the hell are you
what
talking?
did I even say? I said something like, oh, wow. So I said, you're right. When you care about something, it's important. But when someone else cares about something, it's not. And then I said, nice. I'm not going to stop caring about things I find interesting just because other people don't. And at that point, like, I think they responded, but I was just like, I'm done, because
100%
I have to be for my sanity. So
what a
I was
rude
just
and
like,
also crazy person. This is the battle they're going to pick. This is their like big mission. This is the quote unquote toxic behavior they feel the need to call out.
Exactly. And the sad thing is, I know what they're talking about, because people say this a lot, where like somehow people, like if they're minorities or if they're poor, they don't learn grammar. And I'm like, I'm the classist one because you think poor people can't understand correct grammar? Like, what the hell?
That's so stupid. That is just so stupid.
It's so stupid, but also it's the reverse, because you're the one saying that people that like don't have as much money or don't have as much education are too dumb to know these rules. And like, they're not. Like you can care about grammar at any stage. Like what? It would be elitist to say that there are rules to quantum physics just because only people who afforded PhDs understand it. Like that's insane.
Yeah, that's really elitist, Karissa.
Yeah, I know. Like, oh, it's so elitist that you wouldn't let someone operate on you without a medical degree. Like, I guess if that's true, I'm an elitist. Thanks.
That is freaking hilarious. That is such a good response. Oh my God.
Thank you.
I should have been on there, because I would have just been classist and elitist on purpose. Like if they want to see what it looks like, I'm happy to show them. I don't think I actually am, but you know what? I would love to give an impression of it. What the hell?
Yeah, let's just try and see if we can sell it.
Yeah,
I was just I was literally I had typed out the whole response before I had even like processed it. And then I went to backspace because I had used like the term like really twice. So I was going to delete one because, you know, I don't want them to be able to criticize me on my grammar if I'm like arguing about grammar in the comments.
Yeah.
And as I was going to hit the back button, my hand was shaking so much that I almost hit send. So I was like, okay, you need to take a second and just calm down.
I'm like really stressed on your behalf. I would have been livid.
And then literally in the middle of this is when you texted me and asked if we could move the time. So I'm like, do not take this out on Ash.
Why didn't you tell me what was going on? As it was just,
I figured we'd talk, but
oh my gosh. I need to be on TikTok more because I would have just like gotten them. I want to get these people for you. Oh my God.
Part of me was like, gosh, I wish one of my like TikTok friends would come in and say something. But of course, like you don't usually check the comments unless you're about to comment. So
now
it's whatever.
To.
But
now I'm gonna I'm gonna try and remember. And if I remember, I'll go on TikTok and I'll say something. Because what the hell? I mean,
it was just mean.
There was any and that's what bothered me. This is their battle? Like, and I don't think there is. I mean, that is so funny. Your like brain surgeon analogy is so funny to me.
Thank you.
It's so true. And also, that's always hit me wrong too when people have said stuff like, well, you're being elitist because, you know, people that are lower class or are poor, like they don't understand proper grammar, or like it's if they don't have the capacity to. And I'm like,
yeah, like, are you saying they're dumb? Like I'm classist? What are you saying?
Yeah. And also it's weird because most of the grammar rules that grammar nerds understand did not come from what we learned in school. That came from reading books. And luckily, thanks to public libraries and even really bad school systems, books are aplenty. So not a valid argument. I mean, not.
Exactly.
There's a weirdly a different expectation, I think, for people to like speak differently from different classes. And I think that is classist. We're not talking about how to talk to people. We're saying this is correct grammar, by the way.
Yeah. That's just the rule. And like, again, I'm not saying, I think I said this last time I talked about this. I'm not saying that everyone is like a bad person for being wrong. I'm not saying you need to learn it. It's just for other grammar nerds. If like someone else out there had been listening to this song and it was bothering them, that they could be like, oh my gosh, same. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
just so that.
I mean, part of me loves that someone had the audacity to comment that on such an innocent video. I'm like, all of the garbage on TikTok, this is where you felt the need to give your 2 cents.
This is where you target.
What kind of are they just so bored? I don't know.
Who can tell?
My God.
And it was also just like in those moments on social media when like, because I think there was one other comment and it was kind of saying the same thing but in a kind way, so I was like, great, just like and move on. But like when no one else is commenting and you're like alone in your room listening to that, it's like there's a part of you that's like, oh my gosh, are they right? Even though it's insane, and no they're not. And so that's why social media is damaging your head. So I hate
what they want.
It was frustrating. So
I'm so
anyway,
sorry.
I did have good things happen this week, and I'm going to talk about it in the book recommendation section. But that was other things that were happening.
And that happened as I was like actively throwing you off. I was like, and I'm going to make you move this stuff again. I'm so sorry.
I literally sat there. I looked at your text for a second and you said something about like, can we move it? And in my head, I was like, no, like, I don't think I can handle that. But then I was like, you can't say that to her. It's not a big deal. Just move the time.
You could have said it. And I could have just made Javi wait outside the bedroom. And like, I didn't have to get my soda or say hi to him. Like he could have just waited an hour. He'd have been fine.
It's not your fault. People online are mean. So
no, but it is my fault that I do change our recording schedule. Okay. I'm sorry. We might need to just like push officially to like to 5:30 or something. I always think I'll finish my work day by 5 and I'll be ready by 5:15. And I just can't get my chores finished and all of my like equipment set up by then. So maybe
that'll be fine because
for 5:30 my time.
Yeah, especially because now we are, daylight savings happened. So I am now 2 hours behind you. So it's actually early for me anyway.
Oh, okay. We could push it to 6. I mean, we could even push it to 6. That's fine. I'm trying to not go to bed at 7 because it's not healthy. So
are you saying it's too early to go to bed at 7 or too late?
Yes, it's too early to go to bed at 7, which I
agree.
acknowledge.
But I think I have like a skewed definition of what
you do
going
have
to bed
a
on
skewed
time looks like.
100%. What are okay, good. You're drinking a Dr. Pepper. So am I. I was like, is that one of like the berry Dr. Peppers? Have you had those, by the way?
I haven't. I had cherry Dr. Pepper at GCU when we still had those cool machines where you could like mix stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep. Cherry vanilla Dr. Pepper was my favorite.
Yes. And then they took them away and I was like, okay, well, how am I supposed to go back? But I did.
I know.
So
yeah, seriously. I got so used to like cherry Coke for a while was my thing. So everything that wasn't like a cherry flavored soda just tasted wrong. Yeah. And now I've been having like no sodas. So Dr. Pepper is back to just plain Dr. Pepper is back to being a huge luxury.
Cool.
And it's amazing. Yeah.
Nice. All right. How was your week? That's enough of mine.
I feel so bad for your week. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I will try very hard to not throw off your schedule anymore because it's not nice or fair. So
sorry, if it's the only thing, I can handle it. It's just when it's like thing 3 that I can't. So
when you were like, I can handle big crises, it's the little inconveniences. I was like,
absolutely,
exactly the same. Like if you get shot in the leg, I'm the person that you want there. If they're like a house is burning down, I am the person you want with you. If we're getting every single red light on the way to somewhere that we're already going to be like a minute late to, I am not the person to be driving or having the car with you because I will lose my mind.
It's so true. Okay, real quick story again. So I had a doctor's appointment a couple weeks back and I did this stupid thing where I assumed that it was at a certain cross street and it was actually a different cross street. So I'm not even running late. I'm running on time. I pull over to look at the map to be like, where the heck is this place? I end up late because all I had to do was keep driving and I would have seen it, but I had pulled over to like double check, which is just me in many ways.
I did that at my last doctor's appointment. It was like a week and a half ago and I did the exact same thing. I pulled into like the parking lot before it and I was like, dang it.
I was like, I must have passed it. And then I looked at the map. I'm like, no, it's several streets beyond this. I could have just kept driving. And then it was a street that's really hard to get back onto. No. So I was like 5 minutes late.
Oh my God, that's infuriating.
Yeah. But anyway, your week, current week.
Oh, my current week. This is a change because I feel like last week it was just all complaints from me. I had a lot of complaints.
We can swap.
Yeah, we'll just switch off. I don't really have too many complaints this week. Although yesterday morning was a morning. It was my water hose busted, and that doesn't sound like a big deal, except that it's the water hose that connects to the sprinkler that waters our like acre sized garden. Yeah. So it took me 3 hours because I was watering everything by hand. It was insane. And that was, I forget, I think that, the cat had peed on the counter again. Winnie had knocked me over. I forget, Winnie did something else bad. Winnie's been awful. He's been in so much trouble.
Just knocked me over. Moving on.
He does. He knocks me over, which is really annoying. Like I'm trying to work on that with him. And I forget what Ruby had done. She did something bad too. Like it was just everything was bad at once. And it was all in the morning right before work. So I was losing it. I was so mad. Like one of the things that would have happened that morning, like by itself would have been like, oh, it's a morning. But all of them, I was like, nobody can handle this. I'm gonna self-destruct. And I was like texting Hobby. He's like, are you okay? And I was like, no, no,
I'm not. Dang it.
I'm not at all okay. But other than that, I really don't have complaints. I kind of sorted out the water hose situation for now. I like moved a different one over and I'm gonna have to switch them all back when the new water hose gets here. But whatever. For now, it's fine. My brother's in Italy right now, so he's having a good time. My mom's in Colorado. Wow. So
I thought for a second you were going to say my brother's an idiot. I was like, wow, we're going hard on this.
Well, I mean that too, but
but he's also in Italy. So
he's also in Italy where all the other idiots are. I'm just kidding. She's not racist. Her family's Italian. See, I'm allowed to say that stuff. Sì. Sì. È giusto. But anyways, so he's in Italy and he was like, do you want me to bring anything back for you? And I was like, any food item that you could possibly bring back through customs. Yeah, it's anything consumable sounds excellent. Because Italy does food right. I mean, they just really do. I've been like I guess it got me in the headspace for it. So I'm gonna make some homemade pasta this week because it's actually not hard. If anyone's ever been like thought about making homemade pasta and been like, it sounds like too much work, happy to tell you it's not. It's like 4 ingredients and it could not be easier. So
nice.
It's definitely worth doing if y'all haven't done it before. And it's so good. So I'm excited. I'm going to do that this week. And then my mom's in Colorado and I thought I was going to be here by myself for the whole week, which for some reason I was really in my head about it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to do all of the chores by myself. I always do.
Yeah.
There's no difference. I guess it was just knowing that
I
there
always
were
do it
people
anyway.
here. Yeah. It's just that
there's no backup in case something happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, if Winnie knocks me over and I'm dying in somewhere on the property, like that's that for me, you know?
That's it. I'm gone.
Exactly. If I'm like, oh, I'm busy, you know, washing the dishes, my hands are wet and the dog's getting in the trash, I can't be like, hey, could someone take out the trash? Which like that doesn't happen very often, but that's like the level of chore involvement my family typically has. Like if someone's around and it's something urgent, then maybe they'll do it if I ask. Which is not at all a criticism on them. I have a control problem over chores. So this is the way it is on purpose. But I was so in my head that I was like, Caleb's going to be gone. Mom's going to be gone. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have all the chores by myself.
What do I do?
Yeah, I was so stressed. It's been fine because it's not any different. And also now Javi came home, which is so exciting because we have never gotten to be in our house, like just the two of us either. So it's like exciting. And we're like, oh, this is what it's going to be like. Because I think
this is what being a married couple's like.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because by the fall, Caleb will have moved out and my mom's also moving out because she's building a house on the back of the property. So we're like, this is what it's going to be like. It's kind of nice. Also, it's just not a big house. Yeah. So it'll be also be nice because like right now our room I have the green screen on so you guys can't see it, which is a good thing. It's a little claustrophobic because it had 3 chairs in it until yesterday. I finally just stuck one in the garage. So now it has 2 giant chairs, 3 desks, a TV stand, a TV. It has an ottoman. It has several different shelf units for clothes. It has basically no closet at all. It is cramped. It is just very, very, we have everything in this room. So it'll be nice because we can like, you know, put stuff back in the office room where Caleb is right now. So it's good. We're just getting like a little taste of like marital freedom. Which is nice. That's exciting. Yeah. So I really don't have any complaints because Javi got to come home and I'm so excited because I thought I wasn't going to get to see him this month. And he still probably won't be able to be here for my birthday, but that is okay because I just wanted to get to see him at some point this month. So I'm jazzed. I don't really have complaints. He picked up some mac and cheese and fried chicken for me. So from Golden Chick, which is delicious. So yeah, cool. I don't think I have any complaints over here. I'm trying to read more. It's hard when I've been falling asleep at 7. I did talk to my doctor about that. And again, I'm just going to read the meme that I sent Karissa if anyone.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone has seen this meme, but it says when I'm having an emotional crisis, but still try not to be a burden. And it's a character on the phone who says, "Hello, 911. How are you?" And that's how I feel relatable. Like I am. I know, right?
I don't mean to bother you, but I have an emergency.
Yeah, which is exactly how I messaged my doctor the other day because I went into my doctor's appointment a couple weeks ago and she's like, "How are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, you know, I've been a little bit depressed, but I mean, I think it's just probably because I haven't been feeling good. It's not really a big deal, right?" But of course my doctor doesn't know me, so she doesn't know that I would never bring that up in a million years unless I was actively dying. So I went home actively dying for a week and a half, and then I was like had a complete and total full meltdown on Saturday. Like it was a bad day. I was the worst person to be around you've ever been around, and I ruined everyone's day. And there was nothing I could do about it. Like I couldn't stop. It was horrible. Anyway, so I messaged my doctor and I was like, "Hey, so I know I just saw you." And I had to like eat crow and be like, I have this not so good habit of underplaying things that are maybe more important. And then I had to be like, I'm sleeping constantly. I don't enjoy anything. I think maybe we should consider changing my depression medication, like the dosage. I said, or, you know, any other suggestions you have is fine too. I probably should have said that. I realize I underplayed it.
I'm open. I just should have told you.
Yeah, exactly. And they responded very seriously, like right away.
Yeah.
They were like, yes, we are going to, they doubled it. I was like, I mean, doubling it feels excessive, but
Maybe just like a tenth more, 10% increase.
Just like a little bit more. But so they doubled it, which will hopefully help. I mean, I was on the minimum dosage, so it's not that much. But anyways, now you guys are getting like my whole like, medical history. But this is because I'm saying, you guys, it's worth being a little embarrassed. Okay. Because it's not something you should be embarrassed about. Everyone says that. But you know what? Listen, I'm just not woke enough to not be embarrassed about it. So I am. And so I don't talk about it. I didn't tell my doctor about it like I should have. And I have suffered and made those around me suffer. So I ate crow. I said I have a bad habit of not really expressing the intensity of my problems because I'm like, hello, 911. How are you? Just a quick thing if you guys have a chance. So
I am dying.
I'm actively dying. I was just wondering, is there anything we could maybe do about that when you get a chance,
At your earliest convenience.
At your earliest convenience, no pressure. And that is who I am. But y'all, if you need to up your medication or you're like been toying with the idea of it, just say something. Okay.
Talk about it at least.
Talk about it. Because otherwise you have to go back later when you've like completely lost it and you have to eat crow and be like, so I have to admit I wasn't honest before.
I lied.
So I lied.
Let's move past that.
About being okay. And now I have to tell the truth and it feels suspicious. So
now it feels like I'm lying in this moment, but it was actually the other moment I was lying.
Yeah, I was like, it sounds like I'm lying to get drugs, but it wasn't. It was the reverse situation.
Sometimes I get nervous on airplanes.
Because I was lying to get drugs, like a crime. Just some John Mulaney humor if y'all missed his some of the best of John Mulaney's comedy sketches.
For sure.
But anyway, so that's been my week, which that sounded kind of like a complaint, but it was really a success story. It was just so embarrassing. I was like, oh, I've never had to like go back. I've never had to like backpedal so hard with a doctor. And I had to like admit, like, you can't trust me. If I say I'm like at a 6 on the pain scale, assume I'm 2 or 3 higher. Like you just can't trust anything I say.
The doctor now has a note in the file, just like if she says she's okay, double check, triple check. She's lying.
Not. Yeah, they were so serious with their message back too. They like doubled it and they were like, you need to make another appointment ASAP and talk to your other doctor too. And they were like, here's 911 and here's like and I was like, I'm okay.
Do you know the 911 number? Do you know the 911 number? Can you call it if you need to?
Yeah, and I would call and be like, hey, so no big deal, you guys. If anyone's available, I'm losing it completely.
Yeah, you need to send someone at your earliest convenience.
At your earliest convenience. Yeah, they don't know how little good it would do me to call 911. But anyways, I was like, this like serious response was why I didn't want to say anything. I was like, it's not a big deal, you guys. I'm just extraordinarily depressed.
I just need you to be chill about it, okay? That's all.
That's the thing, which is I guess this is kind of funny and kind of sad. I mean, it's the part that made me think of it's funny. The initial thing that happened was sad. Last week I told y'all I got my guinea fowl. We let him out. We did like the 1-by-1 thing, let him out. Winnie apparently has a taste for poultry now. So he killed all but one of them. We saved one and put her back in the coop. So that was infuriating for so many reasons. And Winnie is officially going to be a kennel dog. So the kennel that we had to spend money I didn't want to spend on the kennel is going to get here on Friday. And Javi got it. Thank God. Because he was like, we're not doing this anymore. This is ridiculous. So that's going to happen. But the good news is because Winnie will be in a kennel, we will actually let all the birds free range, which will be they'll be so happy. The eggs will be better. We'll save so much on chicken food. We can have guineas. Overall, it's just a way, way better choice for the whole farm and all the animals. But I'm annoyed that we had to lose 4 guineas to this dog who we have another guinea and he doesn't bother it at all. We had 3. The other 2 got eaten by neighborhood dogs, but he never bothered them. I'm like, I don't understand what's wrong with you, Winnie. But anyways, when it happened, I texted Javi and I was like, I'm upset, but I don't want to tell Mom and Caleb because I don't want their response. I can't deal with the emotions of their response. So I told Mom right as she walked out the door to go to work. So I wouldn't have to bye
Mom, have a good day. Also, by the way,
when he killed all the guineas. Okay. And then, then when Caleb got up, he could see I was in a bad mood at the time and I had to tell him and I told him and then I really quickly went, because I could see his expression, because my brother's very dramatic. He's Italian.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started to end gay. I mean, I don't know which one is more.
Just combined, it's a recipe for disaster.
Lot, okay? It's a recipe for a lot of emotion at once. And so I literally went, no, hold on to that. Your feelings are valid, but I don't have the capacity to feel them for you right now. So I'm going to leave. And then you can react how you want.
What a therapy response. That's like someone who's been going to therapy.
Is it? I'm so glad. I felt really rude saying it, because I also felt like I was being kind of offensive, being mature. Like, you're very emotional and I can't handle it. That's what I felt like I was saying to him, which is not what I said. I said what I just said to you. But I felt bad about it, but I walked away and was like, it was survival. I was like, I can't handle anyone else's big reaction, which is why I didn't want to say anything to the doctors. And they sent me that big serious thing. And I was like, this is what I didn't want.
You're on a list now.
I know. Anyways,
oh my gosh.
So I don't love other people's big emotional reactions. So that's my tangent. We're 30 minutes in now. So how about we get into book recs?
Okay. Mine's going to be kind of long because it comes with a little bit of a story. So
perfect. Because I don't have a book
rec.
I will just say I don't have one. So perfect.
Okay. Okay. So remember, like a year ago, I said something about how I was waiting for the next big musical. And like I wanted a good musical to like really get into. Maybe you don't. It was a year ago.
So much.
Yeah, that's fair. I said that, and your expression, I was like, no, she doesn't remember. I did about a year ago.
I believe you. I believe
this.
You
yeah.
Did. Yeah.
So I don't know if you've heard of this, Ash. I am either about to blow your mind or tell you something you already know, and it's going to be a letdown. Have you heard of Epic the Musical?
No.
I don't even know.
I'm excited by your expression. I love
amazing. Okay, so here's what it is. This guy, I call him George Rivera Herons, but I don't know if that's how you say his first name, because it could be Jorge or something along those lines. People call him Jay. I call him George Rivera Herons. Okay. Hyphenated at the end. He started on TikTok. And he started posting these little snippets of like songs that he was writing for this musical. And it kind of blew up because it's amazing. And now it's like 2 years later and he's finally releasing stuff like on iTunes and Spotify and all this stuff. So it's like in the making. It is a musical about the Odyssey. Like the epic, the Odyssey, Odysseus. When I tell you, this is gearing up to be like the best musical of all time. I don't even feel like I'm being dramatic saying so. It is so good. So here's what's happening. There are going to be 9 like sagas that it's divided into, with like 3 to 5 songs on each one. 2 are out: the Troy saga and the Cyclops saga. And my mind is blown. I have been listening to the Cyclops saga just like on repeat. All of the songs are gold. These may be like the 4 best written songs of all time. The music, it's so catchy. It's so fun to sing to, but it's also telling the story really well. But then it also feels like there's some universal kind of stuff going on being said in it. Oh my gosh. And the singers he got to be a part of it. He's playing Odysseus. He's Odysseus's voice. His voice is amazing. And I love it.
This is so exciting.
So much. So this is why it's a book recommendation. I have been rereading The Odyssey.
Now I understand your theme recommendation, which was, by the way, when you recommended our theme for this episode, The Odyssey was the first thing that I thought of.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm just like, I'm so excited. It'll probably be like years until this musical comes out. I don't even care. Like,
you'll be so ready.
Will it be on Broadway? I will go. Like, I'm so excited.
Going on opening night because you're so into it. I love this for you.
I'm so into it. And the thing is, like, he's definitely on par with Lin-Manuel Miranda, but I think he might be a little better this is better because I love Moana. I love Encanto. I love Hamilton. But this is an English literature thing. You know what I mean? Like, this is
those were like history type nerd things.
Exactly. And
oh my gosh.
I am just so into it. I mean, so one of the songs, you have to listen to Warrior of the Mind first. That's from the Troy saga. It's very good. But I think I go back and forth on a lot of them. I think my favorite one is Remember Them. you would think that this would be like a ballad type of song. It's not. It's awesome. And it's like I have theories about this musical, okay? Because only the first two have been released, but then there are all these snippets out there in the world. I think, remember that, so it ends with Odysseus essentially bragging about who he is. And oh my gosh, this is the best moment maybe of all time. Like Odysseus just like listing these things that he is. It's just so great. But then at the end, he doesn't sing his name. He shouts his name because he's shouting at the Cyclops. And my theory is that at the end of the musical, when he's in Ithaca and he's like destroying all of the suitors, right? He's going to finally sing the conclusion to that melody. And I am just waiting for it. I am like in a reprise.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so excited.
This sounds so satisfying. Oh my gosh.
I don't even think I'm overselling it. I think I'm underselling it.
Wow.
So if you guys haven't heard of it, I go to iTunes or whatever you use. YouTube has them. Check out the Troy Saga and the Cyclops Saga because they're both amazing.
I'm so freaking excited about this.
I've just been rereading the Odyssey because I want to see how closely he is following it. And I had thought that he had taken some liberties, but it's actually very close. So
wow.
I'm really excited to see how it comes through.
I think I read it in middle school for fun.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
It's hard. So I read it in high school and we only did like snippets. Like I think we read about the Cyclops and the Sirens and like Scylla and Charybdis and that kind of stuff. We didn't read the whole thing. Yeah. But I have this translation. Can I remember the name? It's by George Herbert Palmer. Is that right? Let me check real fast. Because the great thing about this translation is that it's not, George Herbert Palmer. And it's written in prose, even though it's originally like a narrative poem. And I just find that much easier to follow. So if you struggle with the poetry aspect, find a translation that does it in prose instead of poetry.
That's a good idea. That's what because I was thinking I want to reread it again, but it'll melt my brain. A prose version sounds doable.
Yeah, for sure. So that's my recommendation. If you guys are like, hey, I don't know if I want to read a classic, but I don't know which one.
Have you read the Iliad?
I have a long time ago. I think it was similar where I read snippets of it.
I read it too, but the Odyssey is so much more exciting.
I know. I mean, the Iliad's great because it's about the war, and war is interesting. But the Odyssey is episodic and like all these things that happen to him. So it's so fun.
Yeah, it is. That's so exciting. So your book rec is the Odyssey, a prose version. If you guys struggle with epic poetry, which I mean,
who doesn't?
We don't use it anymore, so who doesn't? Which actually brings us to our theme, but we'll do our word of the week first.
Okay, that's right. Pause. Our word of the week is poltroon. Poltroon. And this is an utter coward or an abject coward.
Ooh.
That was fun. I know.
Poltroon. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, like an insult, like you poltroon.
You poltroon. It sounds like poultry. So for me, like you like calling someone like a chicken.
Maybe that's where it came from.
Ooh, maybe. I don't know. But poltroon is so much better. We're going to be really classist with the way that we insult people.
Exactly.
Now, because we're
going to use high language, elitist words.
We're elite.
Like this isn't a word anyone kind of like Ash like just tossed her hair over her shoulders and the camera did this weird like slow-mo thing because of the green screen, and I was like, wow, that's really cool.
If you guys want to witness that yourselves, you guys can watch our episodes on YouTube. That is too funny. Oh my gosh. Poltroon, the new elitist insult.
I love it. Poltroon. That's going on a t-shirt.
Oh, that is so good. I see. I'm going to add that too. There was something else we were going to put on a t-shirt. I wrote it down and I forgot. T-shirt designs, ? Okay. So do you want to get into the theme for this episode?
Yes. So speaking of epic poetry, I think we should talk about what kinds of, I guess they're tropes or elements that exist in epic poetry, and like, should we use them today or should we not use them today? Like, are they too old-fashioned, or is there something to learn from them and put into modern writing?
I would say probably. What is there's a narrative devices? No, something devices. They're devices. I forget.
It's not a literary device. Well, is it? It might be a literary device. Some of these might overlap. So
they're poetic devices. But we're going to be talking about them as literary devices in general.
Yes.
So not just applied to poetry, although they historically were poetic devices for poetry.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just have a working list. We'll go off of this. Let's talk about epithets. first.
Yeah.
So epithets are like a 1 or 2 word title that tends to be attached over and over to someone's name. So sorry, my throat's being weird.
No, you're good.
Him. So in rereading the Odyssey, almost I would say 90% of the time, whenever Athena is mentioned, it's clear-eyed Athena, right? It's not just Athena. Odysseus is the long wearied royal Odysseus, or long-tried royal Odysseus.
Oh, I feel that. Long-tried. I'm the long-tried Ash.
Yeah, exactly. And then like some of the characters are like physically described. So like it's light-haired Menelaus. It's that kind of stuff. And I think I like it. I don't think it's something we use a lot in modern writing, but I think maybe we should. Like we should bring it back, because the reason that epic poetry used a lot of epithets is because it's easier to memorize, and a lot of epic poems were orally recited instead of written down. But it actually creates a pretty cool effect, because you do take this one characteristic or this one trait of a person and tie it so closely to their name that they become really easy to envision or get a good idea of who they are. And I kind of like it. And especially if you're going for a third person storytelling, don't use it in first person unless your character is kind of, I don't know, pretentious or just thinks like that.
That would be that would be hard to do in first person, but third person.
Can you just like imagine like Bella Swan just being like handsome Edward Cullen or whatever, just every time?
Oh my gosh, pale-skinned Edward Cullen.
Oh my gosh, but that's essentially what it would be. But in third person, if you have like a story idea and a voice that kind of matches that idea, where you constantly pair this adjective or phrase with this name, I think it could be cool. I think if you're looking for something a little different, I think that this is one that definitely can still work today.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably easier in stuff like that's fantasy too, to some degree, because you can still make it like an official title, like the way that epithets were used. You know, like Clear-Eyed Athena is more of a title than it is like a description. It's both, but because, you know, you can use adjectives to describe anyone, but like in fantasy, you have even a little more license, because giving a title, any kind of like official quote unquote title to something, makes them seem like more important or more royal or more dignified or more well known. Like the bloody bearded, you know, someone, you know, and that's really evocative. You don't have to know anything else about that person.
True.
Because you just have the epithet to know this is someone who is infamous. And obviously they're infamous if that's what their epithet is. So there's a lot you can do with that. You could also do it in like even contemporary stuff, when you're like telling stories about the past, you know, like if you're telling like a ghost story or a historical story or some like mystery, you know. So I think that there's definitely ways to tie it in. You just have to be creative.
Yeah, for sure. Also, just on that note, Hermes is referred to as the speedy comer, and I just think that's really funny. Like hyphenated, capitalized, hyphenated speedy comer.
The speedy comer, Hermes. Hermes. It's too funny. So much about Hermes, I do think is so laughable.
It is. He's great.
So useful. He's such a useful god.
They're like, we need something. Call Hermes.
He's the speedy comer.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's too funny.
But yeah, repetition in general is used a lot in epic poetry, again, because it's easier to memorize if you repeat stuff. But another thing, I don't know if this is a device, but just something to think about that cracks me up is that I think every single time Athena speaks in like a council of the gods, Zeus's, like the first words out of Zeus's mouth are, "What words just passed the barrier of your teeth?" and
Zeus.
And then he like goes on, and it's usually like Athena being like, "Man, this sucks. I don't like this." And Zeus is essentially just saying like, "What are you talking about? You the plan." And then she's like, "Oh yeah." And it's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
I just love that. What word just passed the barrier of your teeth? I want to bring that back.
I think that's excellent. I do think we should bring that back. Yeah. That is excellent.
It's basically like a cooler version of "What did you just say?" but like way cooler.
What was that? It's that, but awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's not an epithet, but it's like a repetition kind of thing. And it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that is fun. I like that.
It's kind of like an inside joke. So I guess those existed even back with the Greeks. So
I guess the Greeks had humor. LOL. They only invented comedy.
They're like, okay, they're kind of funny.
Yeah, I guess they're a little bit funny. Although, man, it's just like studying like entertainment throughout time, because I minored in theater, it is really weird, like what people found like really, really funny.
Yeah.
Like Greek comedy, and then like Roman comedy, and then like we had like Renaissance comedy, and it's just, it is so strange. Some things are across the board people find funny. And I'm like, yeah, humans have never changed. But then like in weird little like niche ways, like contextually, I'm like, I don't understand how that ever would have been funny. But of course, the Greeks were like, this was the best comedy of all time. So
we are hilarious. So
no one's ever been funnier. So yeah. Well, do you want to move on to the next one, the epic hero?
Yes, I do think the epic hero is great. So here's the thing about epic heroes. They are essentially the epitome of what a culture values, right? So Odysseus is an epic hero. He is smart, he is strong, he never gives up, he perseveres, he prays to the gods, all of these things that the Greeks found to be culturally idealistic. If you take someone like Gilgamesh, who is even farther back, or Beowulf, they have slightly different traits. Physical strength tends to be a pretty common one, but it's not necessary if a culture doesn't value that.
Well, for men,
yeah, exactly.
Always.
And so the epic hero essentially has no flaws, which the problem with that, of course, is that it can make for an uninteresting character. And then I think it's called, is it the Byronic hero, who has like all flaws and like almost no positives? Lord Byron,
because Lord Byron was that way.
Yeah, they're like at opposite ends of the spectrum. And so the interesting thing about Lord of the Rings is that Aragorn is in the books an epic hero. He is the epitome of what essentially Tolkien was saying, this is like what men should strive to be, right?
Yeah.
But the movie made him more flawed.
They made him like a romantic hero.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because he needed to have an interesting character arc. And so the difference between book Aragorn and movie Aragorn is a really good like example of how literature has changed over time.
Yeah,
like
it's true.
The things that we find interesting, because a lot of cultures used epic poetry to preserve their cultures and ideals. And so of course the epic hero was useful. They wanted someone that would succeed. They wanted that kind of not necessarily happy ending, but a happy ending from that character's efforts. So like if the epic hero fails, it's always because of the gods or because of something out of their control. So it was kind of this idea of there is still an ideal, even if the ideal isn't going to work out for you in the way you want, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Finn McCool, also from Irish mythology. I just forgot about him, but Finn McCool, even his name is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Another epic hero. But same. Yeah. He was same. I think it was like having like blonde hair at the time was considered, like awesome. So he's always like, I think it's Finn McCool. There's a couple, I mean, Irish mythology really liked their epic heroes. There's blondies? A lot actually. Epic heroes. They love like it. They're blondies. They're blondies too. No, but that too. Because like they'll always like describe them as like really strong and having like long golden hair. They're always those two things for like Irish epic heroes, like in like the olden days. Those were like two huge factors that were for some reason like ideals of that age.
Right.
Which have lasted until now. But now men with like long blonde hair is not necessarily considered like more manly than something else.
True. It kind of and that's the thing, is that like the cultural ideal does change over time. And so it is really cool if you study literature to see how it changed over time, and having those examples in the past is just very clarifying. Because you can see like this is what they valued, because it's something the epic hero had.
And so for anyone out there being like, this is elitist in classes, they learned this in college. No, this was on our own. This was for fun. I read about Finn McCool for fun on the internet. So
that's right.
Yep.
And Aragorn was obviously not something I learned in classes. So
you do not have to be elitist or classes to get epic
you just have
poetry.
To care about it to learn. It's you can have different categories of things that you care about. Different people can care about different things, and you learn in the category you care about. It's called knowledge.
If you don't care about epic poetry, that's okay. If you're like, this is not my episode, it's too much to bite off to try and learn how to understand it. Understandable. Epic poetry it can be a huge headache. It is a slog. Even when you like it, it's a slog. So, I mean, it's okay. But we're talking about how to make it more interesting, like to the everyday reader these days.
Exactly.
kind of like translating its usefulness to modern day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the thing about the epic hero is that I think almost in certain ways, we still are writing about epic heroes. It's just that our perception of perfection has changed, because now we just see flaws as part of the ideal, right?
Yes.
So like true. In like I at least in Western culture, basically there's this idea of humans are flawed, and that's potentially something to celebrate. And like whether or not you agree with that, that does seem to be a cultural concept that we're really digging into. The kind of like perfect the way you are, even if you're flawed. Yeah. And so when you have all of these different types of characters in books who have flaws, but they're like, I don't know, quote, uniquely themselves or very individual or whatever, that is still kind of a form of an epic hero. It's just that our culture has changed what we think the epic hero should look like.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's a child, but I would say Percy Jackson is a good example of a modern day version of an epic hero. It's first of all, it's episodic, it's a saga, it's inspired by Greek mythology, so of course it is. He's named after Perseus,
right?
So unsurprising,
right?
But like, I'm trying to think, like, it's not that he never makes mistakes, because our culture does believe you like an individualistic and like, learning from your mistakes and stuff, but he doesn't really make any really big mistakes,
right? The mistakes he makes are understandable.
They're all like really understand, like he doesn't really do anything like egregiously wrong ever. And a lot of his quote unquote mistakes are because the gods got involved or gave him the wrong information, or because someone else was lying to him. So I think that for a character, he's not a bad example of a modern day epic hero, because his like, if the world is at stake, so there's like huge stakes, which is typically something like the stakes are huge, like there's going to be a war, the world's going to end, and he doesn't make any out of the question mistakes. So I mean, I think that I think that those are probably like two of the big things that make an epic hero. And he's consistently him. He's not like vacillating wildly. And also I think you have to think about an epic hero. There's epic heroes, romantic heroes, Byronic heroes, which are sometimes also romantic. But there is a difference. Like an epic hero, there is a little bit of romance in the Percy Jackson series, but it's not the main focus. So I think you have to kind of keep that in mind too. That's kind of part of an epic hero story. There's romance in the story of Odysseus, but it's not the main focus. It could be like the main focus for like a saga, maybe. Not even like the main focus. It could be like a big factor, but an epic hero is not the same as a romantic hero. So if you're planning to have like a romance heavy book, or for the romance to play really importantly into it, that might not be the book to try and incorporate an epic hero. But if you have a book and you're like, wow, it's mostly like action adventure, there's not too much romance in this, maybe you already have like the perfect groundwork for an epic hero.
And another thing that the epic hero tends to do is defend its culture, or his or her culture. So I do think a lot of this like own voices and like we want to hear from all these different perspectives concept is kind of like people defending their own culture. And so the characters in these books are kind of by nature a little more epic hero than maybe was happening in the earlier 2000s, because they're presenting something as a cultural ideal, and individualism is part of that cultural ideal, so they all seem a little different, but they are still kind of following that pattern. So there are definitely, like, thinking about Kaz Brecker, I don't think Kaz Brecker is an epic hero, first of all because he's not a hero, and second of all because he's not meant to be like an ideal to strive for. He's just an interesting character. So there is like a relatable character versus a likable character versus a competent character, I think is what I've heard.
Nikolai could almost be an epic hero, because his story includes almost no romance, not none at all. It's episodic to an extent, and he really is the ideal of the country of Ravka. Like he really is like he really doesn't make any like egregious mistakes. I think epic heroes, a lot of the times things go wrong because of outside factors, not necessarily because they make big mistakes. So obviously you can have interesting characters that are not epic hero like, that are making their own mistakes, or that do have heavy romantic factors or whatever, but I definitely think there's still a place for epic heroes if we're acknowledging that flawed human beings is part of our cultural ideal these days. So I agree.
I wonder if that will change too. Like I wonder if we're gonna like circle back around to thinking like
I've been wondering
flaws aren't acceptable, and then you're going to start to see that in books.
I know,
So I
because
don't know.
life is a cycle and literature is a cycle and
Mhm.
literature reflects life. And that's why if you look back at literature, it's so interesting to see
Yeah.
how like cyclical like human nature is, because we go from one extreme that's reflected in one literary period to the opposite extreme, the next literary period. And it's so
Right.
interesting. I'm curious too. I keep wondering,
It
I'm
is.
like, are we gonna like reverse at
Circle
some
back
point?
around. I
Like,
know.
surely
I'm
we
so
are.
interested.
Yeah.
I just want to be
It's
part of a literary movement too. I'm like, what are people, hopefully I get
well, the thing is,
published.
we
What are people going to
probably
say?
are,
Like,
but like
yeah,
we're not going to know
you
until
don't
someone
know.
like 100 years from now like names this literary period and compares it to the periods that came before and after.
Exactly.
Crazy. I
It's so
can't wait to
interesting.
know it.
I know. But yeah, epic heroes are kind of the embodiment of whatever literary period you are in, even if you can't pin it down in the moment. So
yeah,
I think they're definitely still useful.
What about the invocation of the muses?
Yeah, so this one isn't, so Invocation of the Muses is where you start out the story with the person narrating essentially asking for the god's assistance to tell the story well and to tell it accurately and stuff.
Yeah.
And again, this is just really easy for memorization technique, so this is why it's in a lot of epic poetry. Yeah. I don't know that direct Invocation of the Muses is useful, but I do think that it is sort of like a frame story. Yeah. And I do think that frame stories are cool. I think the frame, I mean frame stories existed, but
like if it's fantasy, you could still, have that, like asking the gods or the muses or the fairies or something. If it's sci-fi, you could do like asking like a database or something, or like a crazy computer or something.
Oh yeah.
Like I think there are still ways to do it. It probably is harder in contemporary. I don't know what you would what would be a parallel in like a contemporary writing. Not that it's not possible, but
yeah, contemporary would be hard because unless it's very religiously focused and you're actually appealing to a god or a muse, which you can do. But I think so the school for good and evil, the school of good and evil, it starts out with like that storybook kind of saying like, now we're going to tell you the story, and then it kind of like breaks the fourth wall in the book, like throughout is like actually talking, and the people are like, what are you saying? Which is fun, and the kind of a humorous way you can do it. But that seems kind of like an invocation of the muses if you start out in some kind of like once upon a time way that doesn't use the words once upon a time. All these kinds of things are sort of
like
related.
There's some like powerful disembodied storyteller is the idea.
Yeah, exactly. And it does tend to work really well again in third person, but especially with some kind of omnipotent third person narrator. Again, a lot of epics use omniscient narrators, so I think that's probably the best use for it. But you're right. Now I'm thinking about sci-fi and something like Illumini. Like if you start out by like a character typing into a database and trying to find stuff to tell the story well, that's technically an invocation of the muses. It's just that the muses change.
Exactly. So. And then Aiden is this like essentially all powerful AI who ends up telling most of this story because he's the one who has access to all of like the data. Because it's if you guys haven't read that, it's an amazing book. Amazing. It's so creative the way that it was written too.
Yeah.
I mean, like that. I mean, in that universe, it's not, it's not a deity, but it's something all powerful and out of normal human reach, that kind of has a mind of its own.
Exactly.
I feel like anything, same like the storybook in The School for Good and Evil is something inhuman, disembodied. The idea is it's magical and more powerful than the average person, and it's something a human can't control. I feel like anything that meets those requirements, I feel like that's kind of like a modern invocation of the muses.
Yeah, I agree. So like we said, it might not be as useful in something contemporary or realistic, but definitely in the speculative fiction genres, I think there are ways that you can still use it and make it your own and make it modern. Because again, opening up a story with a direct invocation of the muses is probably not going to do, it's not going to do perform very well as a query letter or as like on like Kindle Unlimited or anything, because people are going to get bored. But if you kind of weave in the idea and the concept and just change it up for your story, I think this one is also still useful. So
yeah, I agree. In media res, this is one of my favorites. I mean, in media res is
I was gonna say, I think you love this one.
I love this one.
I had totally forgotten that the Odyssey actively starts in media res, because it starts out with Odysseus on Calypso's island, and if you know anything, that's basically his last stop. So it like goes back to like tell the story again, which I had totally forgotten. And I know in media res is an epic thing, but I always forget about it because I think I remember stories chronologically. So it's always strange to
most
me.
people probably do. In media res, it basically means in the middle. So it basically means that you start telling your story in the middle of the action. It doesn't have to be like Odyssey level extreme where you start at the end.
Start at the end.
But it's valid, and then they go backwards and tell the story, which also works. It could even be you're in the middle of like an action scene and there's no context for what got us to that point, so you have to kind of like backtrack to explain what got you there, and then you go on with the story. And you can pick any point in the story to do in media res, but I think it is like if you're trying to like instantly grab someone's attention and instantly raise the stakes, I think in media res is a great way to do that.
Did you ever see the movie I want to say it's Shimmer Lake? It was on Netflix. So. It has Dwight from The Office in it. So if anyone wants to look it up, that's what it is.
Write that down.
The interesting thing about this movie is that it starts, I think it takes place over 4 or 5 days, but it goes backwards. So it starts on day 5 and then goes backwards to give you context about what exactly was going on that day 5. And it's so interesting how it all kind of goes together. Kaleidoscope, have you seen that on Netflix?
No.
It's like this heist, and I don't think it's like 10 episodes, and you can watch them in any order because it happens like 10 years before the heist and 10 hours after the heist and that kind of stuff. And so, each one, it's very cool. Each one is kind of giving you different context depending on what order you watched it in. All those are kind of examples of in media res where the it's not happening chronologically, where you're kind of starting at a strange point and then you're going back to give context and then potentially going forward again once the reader or viewer has all the context. And I do think this is making a comeback is with stuff like Shimmer Lake and Kaleidoscope, because I think people are looking for like experimental formats in stories now, because it's not that stories get boring, but sometimes you get really entrenched in a trend or and then it just kind of becomes boring.
The way that a story is going to be told, and so nothing's like that surprising. But it really, I think a lot of mysteries use this too, because like you'll start the story, and I mean maybe not necessarily at the beginning, but usually you start from a murder and then you work backwards to figure it out. So I think it kind of lends a level of mystery to whatever your genre is, even if it's obviously not mystery, because you have to explain how you got there. So it's so intriguing. It's so great for like capturing intent, like as a hook if you're going to use it at the beginning. Like it's just so effective. I love it. It grabs me. If you're someone who's easily distracted, like, or you're like,
this is an Ash strategy.
I need to be sold in the first 5 minutes or I'm not going to finish it. This is for those type of people. But this is absolutely an Ash strategy. It's for me. I use it. I need it.
It's my thing. And like we were saying with literary movements, how stuff changes and then it kind of comes back around. I would say that like when you think about the Renaissance and then potentially now, I think this is why people look back at epics and say, okay, well now we're kind of interested in these again because they have that different format of storytelling. And so it's something different. So even though a lot of the things in the Odyssey are and other epics, this is just obviously on my mind, but a lot of the themes and the events are kind of universal, like they're things you've kind of seen before. The fact that it takes place out of order or in a strange order or just in media res to open the story, I think can hook people a little easier. And it's a little bit of a risk, like querying wise, if that's what you're doing. But I do think that ultimately it pays off story wise because of how it gives the reader a different experience than they're used to. So you can tell a very similar story, but the format in which you put it can really impact how it's received. So
I totally agree. What about epic catalogs?
So
I'm not a fan of epic catalogs.
I know. So epic catalogs are when you just list a bunch of stuff. Again, memorization technique. You just list out all the food on the table. You list out all the weapons everyone has. You list out,
all the descendants of this person. And we're
genealogies.
Like, it doesn't matter. Epics love the list off genealogies.
It's so true. And although the genealogy thing too is often used as an epithet, which I just think is better. So to be like blank, son of blank, which is
so
just
much better than an epic catalog. I would much rather an epithet than a catalog.
And this is also one of the struggles people have with Lord of the Rings, because again, Tolkien was attempting to write a modern day epic, and there are a lot of lists. I think especially around food, if I'm remembering correctly. Beowulf does it, Gilgamesh does it. And
Mm-hmm.
again, memorization technique, but I don't know. Do we think there's a form of this that is useful? I think changing it into an epithet is really the only thing I have there.
You're like, use an epithet, not an epic catalog.
Yeah.
I have a hard time. Yeah, unless you're writing something for oral memorization purposes, I don't see a purpose for an epic catalog. Please message us, y'all, if you're seeing a way to apply this. I hate to look at any like literary device from the past and go, oh, it's not applicable now.
It's outdated.
But this one does feel outdated. I can't think of a way to apply it. So if anyone has any ideas.
Yeah, I mean,
you're not really supposed to list anything, or maybe that's just how we write now, that everyone's like, avoid writing lists.
Maybe like a really short list. Because I'm thinking the only time when I feel like it would be useful is if you slip something foreshadowy in the middle of the list. But then at the same time, people skip over lists a lot. I think like I do, my eyes just go, where does this list end? And that's when I pick it up again.
I guess so, like
I don't know. Maybe an Easter egg.
Maybe not Shadow and Bone. I always say Shadow and Bone. Tiger's Curse by Colleen Hook. The other, what is happening out there? Anyways, the other, I don't know what's happening in my living room. It's just a weird sound. By Colleen Hook, Tiger's Curse. In one of the books in that series, there is a sort of epic catalog, I guess, where they list up, it's all this like crazy magical food. Again, it's food, I think. And then like these basically these like magical decorations in this area. I guess maybe if you're trying to set a scene like really specifically or define an aesthetic and it's really important, maybe you can use an epic catalog then. I don't know. I still tend to kind of doze off when I'm reading those. But that might be a place where you could utilize this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of lists, I feel like usually you want to vary the things in the list. So if you're describing a scene, you describe like a food and then a decoration and then like a sound or something, so that it's a varied list and it keeps people's attention. Is that a modern epic catalog? I mean, maybe.
I think so. And I'm going to say that if you're going to use an epic catalog, I do think you should vary the items at the very least. Otherwise, I have a hard time recommending that anyone use it. But that's kind of like in Tiger's Curse. If I just don't remember which book it was in the series where they do that. She kind of like goes from like the decorations to the food to the table setting to the decorations to the food to the table setting. So it feels more mixed up, but it really is probably a page or two that's mostly just describing the setting, but in a very like kind of listy way. But because it's all varied, it didn't feel like a huge, time suck. I don't know.
Yeah, so if you're using an epic catalog, make it feel as little like an epic catalog as possible.
Yeah. I guess we're not big fans of the epic catalog.
Yeah. But, it could be personal too. I can't think of many examples where it's being used in modern stuff, so I feel like we're not the only ones, but maybe it too will come back around.
Maybe it will.
But who knows?
I don't know. What about speeches?
Yes. So the thing about epic poetry is that basically there aren't back and forth conversations as often. It's just like a page of someone talking and then a page of the next person's response. And it tends to be one-on-one instead of like a lot of people around a table talking. And it tends to be very long-winded, right? And I think this has merit in certain situations. I mean, it wouldn't work if you had a lot of people sitting around a table or a lot of people like planning something.
No,
but it definitely works.
Someone
like
giving a speech, like an inspiring speech to their soldiers or to a group of people, or they're laying out a plan that's already been decided. Then
or plotting something.
Yeah. I agree. Sure. I think you can get away. Or if you have like a really like emotional outburst, like a diatribe, which occasionally happens, those can sometimes be long.
Yes,
I like it when the speeches are usually interrupted by like at least a little bit of action or description here and there. But I do think that if it's a momentous moment, then you could get away with the speech, even if it is
the
like
speech
a
is
page
building.
and a half long. Yeah.
The speech, if you're not going to have any action interspersed, you have to make the words of the speech build so that it's keeping people's attention. So each line is progressing to the next one in a way that's like, oh, no way. And then you're like, oh, no way. And then it keeps going.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why diatribes work really well, because they're angry typically, and that builds. So
yeah, exactly. I agree. You have to really work to keep people's attention with a speech, but I think it has its uses.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't say to do it like an epic where most of the speaking is done in speeches.
No.
I just think, again, it might come back around, but if it's
I
don't.
An epic moment in the story, maybe you can put a speech in it. I mean, that's not a bad way to think about it.
It's so true. Yeah. Just focus it in somewhere instead of making it a style thing, unless it's really useful to your story to do it that way.
Yeah.
Do
you want to do poetic narratives?
Yes. I think, well, obviously novels are being written in verse a lot more now. So there is a place for this. The first example I can think of in a modern example is Ellen Hopkins. She wrote Crank and Identical and those kinds of books. And she deals with very hard-hitting issues. So it's not really epic poetry, but it is in verse, which is at least similar in style. Because I don't think hers rhyme either. It's more about rhythm than rhyming. So I do think there's a place for that. I certainly don't think I would ever write anything like that because it's just not my skill set. But I think it's good.
I want to say If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio does kind of dips in and out of poetic narration, which makes sense. It's all about Shakespeare students, basically. So it's so artful. I mean, don't quote me on it exactly because I've never been an expert. I can't write poetic verse. Never have, probably still can't. It's hard. But if ML Rio didn't do it, I know that she could do it. You can just tell because of her like skill level. But I do think that she kind of dips in and out of that, if I'm recalling correctly. Have you read If We Were Villains yet?
No, I have it on my list, but I've been in my reading slump. It's up there. I see it on my shelf.
It is good, and you need to read it so that you can tell me if I'm right about that. But I'm pretty sure. Okay. I think again, it could be kind of a hard sell probably for a publisher if you've written something in like poetic verse completely. Not that you couldn't, because it is being done, and it does make you stand out. It's unique, but you'd have to be an expert at it. So doing something more like ML Rio where you kind of dip in and out of it, if it fits with the theme of your story, like hers is, all about like Shakespeare and stuff, and like applying like the plots of Shakespeare to like real intrigue in life that's happening. So it makes a lot of sense thematically that she would dip in and out of poetic verse. So if you can thematically justify using it, dip in and out of it. Like if you're doing something inspired by a classic, maybe if you're doing something inspired by an epic, maybe dip in and out of poetic verse. Like just, consider your options. Or if you're trying to write something that just feels really classic, maybe dip in and out of it. I think that that's a lot easier of a sell, unless you feel very confident in yourself, and then go for it.
Right. I think in terms of novels in verse, Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds is probably one of my favorites. I think the strength of this one, though, is that it's shorter, which epic poems are not. And so maybe if you can keep up that style for a shorter book, like 200 pages, I think that's really useful, because as a reader, it is kind of a palate cleanser to read something in verse, because it can deal with really heavy things, but it's less of a commitment time-wise, right? And so I feel like you can definitely appeal to a lot of people in that way. But then it's also, if you struggle to keep up that rhythm, you only have to do it for 200 pages instead of like 300 to 400. So length is something to consider there too, because epic poems tend to be very long. Like Paradise Lost is so long. But if you can make it a little shorter, I think the poetic narrative is a good call, or at least an acceptable call. It can't be good. I
agree.
So
I totally agree. Is there anything else that you want to cover? I know that we're already running long.
I know. No, it's okay. I have a couple minutes, but I did kind of just want to say, it's kind of like a little nugget, like the Zeus line to Athena, is that I'm noticing it's not a genealogy list, right? It's not an epic catalog, but I am noticing that a lot of times when someone new comes onto the scene in the Odyssey, someone that knows them will give like a recap of their backstory, which I think is really interesting.
That is interesting.
This is a totally creepy story. I'm not going to remember their names, but there is this woman. There's a king and queen on this island that he makes it to. And she is the niece of the king. So they're married and she's his niece, and it's super gross. Yeah. But Athena is like disguised as this small child explaining this to Odysseus. And just, again, it's really funny. Like, it's this man who has just been shipwrecked, and this little girl is leading him to the king and queen, just being like, yeah, so here's the whole story. He had a brother, but then the brother had one kid and then he died, so he didn't have any sons. So then they got married, and it was just
gross.
Very weird. Like,
that's hysterical.
Gross, but also kind of funny. And so I don't know if this is I think this is a better way to slip a genealogy thing in. Like if the genealogy is important, which again, we don't tend to write as though it is, but
it was though, up until very recently
in
history, it was considered extremely important. Yeah.
And especially if you're writing in a fantasy world or a historical setting or something where it was important what someone's genealogy was, or at least reasonably could be, I think this is a good way to slip it in while avoiding the epic catalog.
I agree. Have someone
and
else
you can do it in a humorous way.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. That's funny.
I wouldn't go for incest, but unless it's important. But
I'm gonna second that.
There it is.
Yeah.
So, but it's like in conversation instead of like being told by the narrator. So it feels a little more active. They can be walking somewhere as they talk about it. So
yeah, I agree.
That's a little nugget of advice. But
I think it's a great nugget of advice. Is there anything else you want to say about applying epic styles? Yeah, epic devices.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot. I guess I would just say I do think it's worth reading them if you are interested at all. It is a slog, like we've said, but it is fun. And then you feel like you've achieved something when you finish it,
really
right?
feel like you've achieved
sweet,
something.
I can check that off my list. Woo!
It's true.
I'm gonna be really proud when I can say I've read the entire Odyssey. So that's pushing me through some of the
felt
the
very, very proud parts. When I read it. I read the Iliad and the Odyssey both all the way through, and I was physically painful. But did I understand half of it? No, but I did it. I did it, and I would probably understand at least a little more if I did it again. So I probably should at least read the Odyssey again, just because it's been so long. But it feel like a huge accomplishment.
And so if you are interested in it, I would recommend. I didn't even know this was a thing. I picked up this copy at like a school sale, but there are versions of epics out there, epic poetry that is written on, that's like formatted on the page in prose style. So I definitely think that helps, because I'm definitely getting a lot more of it than I thought I would. So I would recommend.
That's probably why I struggled so hard too.
It's the poetry format. I think I just struggle. I think people are poets or they're prose, and I don't know that it crosses over as much as maybe people think it does. I think your brain is just hardwired for that.
I kind of agree.
But yeah, so find the version that you can like get through, and I think there is a lot you can learn from it. And so like you don't have to. You can say I'm just going to read modern stuff and be inspired by that. That's fine. But there is a lot in the past that you can take from. So and if you read the Odyssey, I would recommend listening to the musical afterwards, or before, or in the middle.
Or during, or in media res,
Yeah, exactly. I'm so looking forward to part 3. So anyway,
I'm so looking forward to listening to this thing now.
It's so good.
I've got so many.
I do not think you'll be disappointed. I know this is an episode of recommendations, so you're welcome.
Thank you. Well, do you want to tell me about your exciting writing updates?
I don't really have any exciting writing updates.
Oh, I thought you said that you did.
I didn't.
Oh, no,
I just had the musical. Yeah, it was the book wreck. It was the Cyclops stuff.
You want to tell me about any not exciting writing updates?
I mean, I'm kind of in between stuff right now. So I'm doing this weird thing where I'm kind of plotting out some books and then coming up with titles for them, because I find coming up with titles to be fun, but only at very specific points in my life. So I'm trying to ride the inspiration that I have to create titles.
Nice.
So that's basically what I've been doing. So I'm like, my series that I've written, right? I do have a sequel series like in mind. So I've been like kind of planning what that would be like and then titling stuff, which I can't even, first of all, it would be useless to write them because I cannot query them because they are a sequel series. So I'm really just forcing myself, like I am not going to start to write them. I'm just getting the plot straight, right? I'm just kind of doing a little bit of planning. But second of all, I have other book ideas that I want to write and they could affect those. So I'm like, I can't write those either because it's writing out of order, and I can't do that either because I'm a chronological person. So I'm not making any writing progress, but I have come up with some pretty cool titles. So
I love that. I'm so bad at titles always. I don't have any writing updates. I have more like reading updates, and it's not even that I have been reading, it's that I'm excited. I am trying to like go into a season of, because I'm on my season of rest for writing after that ghostwriting debacle. Every time I do ghostwriting, it feels like a debacle. And so I am in a season of rest and recovery, which I feel like for me means reading for fun. So I'm trying to take space out of every day to read some of the books that have been on my shelf forever, not just the ones that are for our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club. Like actually just read some that you sent me. You sent me a series for Christmas, and it's on my shelf just waiting to be read. Yes, exactly. So I'm excited to read that. This made me inspired. This episode made me inspired. I have that book. I think it's called Andromeda or something. I forget. It's the one that just came out a couple years ago. That's like Greek mythology. I forget. Everyone's probably seen the cover of it. I don't even know what it's about. I just know it's like a retelling of like a Greek myth, and that's been on my list forever. So I think it's a standalone, which is great. So I have so much to read, and I'm going to try and devote my brain space to that. And that's my writing update.
Cool. That's good though. It's good to get away from writing sometimes to read. So
yes, exactly. To rediscover the passion. And so I think that's everything, unless there's anything else you want to share.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
I got a lot out. I vented a lot of stuff, which is great. So thank you all for listening.
And Ash of course. Thank you for letting me throw off your day even more by like repeatedly changing our schedule. And now for staying 10 minutes later than I know that you're able to. So I'm just going to say really quickly, if you guys love Karissa as much as I do, please go below, leave us a 5-star review. We love to hear from you. If you guys have thoughts about what we talked about today, or you guys want us to talk about something else on the pod, we would love to do all of that with you. So just message us. You can message us on social media. We're on TikTok and Instagram. We are the Scripturient Society. Or you can email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. And you can also go to that website and check out our really cool merch, of which there will soon be even cooler merch, like possibly a You Poltroon shirt or something to that effect. So I do have it written down along with several other ideas. So I will try and get on that for everyone. But those are some great ways to support the pod. You guys can also join our writing group on Discord. The link is below in the description. And yeah, whatever you guys are working on, we want to hear about it. Thank you guys for showing up as always. You're wonderful. And until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.